So, hi everyone. Once again, this is Kumar Kirad. I'm the manager operations from Marketing Solutions Business Shared Services team. I'm a part of the Green Impact Network Pune chapter, and with me I have Dr. Anand Nadkarni. To welcome him, the Green Impact Network Pune chapter is pleased to introduce you to a true pioneer in the field of psychiatry and mental health. That's Dr. Anand Nadkarni. Dr. Anand Nadkarni's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. From his groundbreaking work in establishing the Muktangan De-Addiction Center to his tireless efforts in promoting holistic mental well-being through the Institute of Psychological Health, he has left an indelible mark on society. But Dr. Nadkarni is more than just a renowned psychiatrist. He is also a gifted writer, playwright, and creative consultant. His multifaceted talent have earned him numerous awards and accolades, showcasing his deep understanding of human psyche. Today, we have the privilege of delving into some thought provoking topics with Dr. Nadkarni in our fireside chat. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Over to you, Dr. Nadkarni, in case if you would like to say something from your end before we begin with our questions.
Thank you so much, Kumar, for inviting me to this interactive session. And I can see more than 80 people now part of this conversation. And I think many more will join and many more will see it later in a recorded version. We are about to visit an ocean because our mind is nothing short of an ocean. And we are going to get some water in our hands out of this ocean. So I'm very glad that you people have thought about this theme and have given me this opportunity to interact with you all. And let us all try to make this as meaningful as possible. So my very warm namaskar to each and every one of you.
Likewise, Dr. Nadkarni, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. And we are thankful for you to spare your time for our session as well. So to begin with, I would probably just pick some initial pointers where I am sure that our audience and colleagues who have joined across all different locations would want to know or would want to have some insights on from your end. So something to do with mental health in general. What we would like to know is what are the common mental health challenges in today's time, and probably how can one individual maintain a decent work-life balance?
Very true. Each one of your questions is a session in itself, but we'll try to make it precise. What are the common mental health challenges in today's time? What is very important is that today we have been facing a lot of problems of distress. Previously, clinical psychiatry only used to take care of disorders. So you had a thought disorder or a mood disorder or a behavioral disorder. So all psychiatry was focused on disorders. Now what is very important in the very concept of mental health is that along with disorder, you need to address distress and you need to address development. So mental health is a three-tier concept: disorder, distress, and development. And where the change has occurred? The change has occurred everywhere. The understanding about disorders now had changed than before. So people with disorders are also approaching a lot of mental health professionals. So that kind of a stigma has got down. And people now, especially in India, we feel that palpable difference. Post-COVID, people are curious about emotional health. So as far as disorders are concerned, people have started taking help much earlier than before. Distress segment has multiplied. Why? Number one, the major challenge that all of us are facing is relationships. And nowadays, there are more relationship tangles than I suppose ever before. You take a parent-child relationship, you take spouses, you take friends, you take colleagues, you take generations and the gaps amongst them. So relationship problems is a challenge. And why? Because sometimes the individualism also works towards extremism. And then the acceptance and tolerance about other people's space becomes less. And people start looking at relationships as possessions. And that is why relationships start getting sore more often. So that is one challenge. The second challenge is what will come, I think, in what has come in your next question, lifestyle. The lifestyles becoming very fast, very consumeristic and overlapping. Previously, work life and family life to an extent were very different. But now there is a overlap there also because many people work from home. And we are now getting that overlap. And our lifestyle is becoming focused onto competition, consumerism, and I want to have things. I should experience, I should consume. Nowadays, it is a fashionable thing to say that we market experience. And people are hungry, greedy about experiences. And they go on piling their experiences so much so that there is hardly any time for digestion, assimilation. So our lifestyle has some roots of the challenges. And that is where the productivity part and the pleasure part. See what you are saying in the work-life balance. Actually, it is an artificial division. And most of us will agree that when at work we think about family, when at home we think about work. It is what to focus according to priorities. That is what balance is. Balance is not here there is family, here there is work. It will never be. And all that is with our lifestyle aspirations, which we fail to understand. That if our lifestyle aspirations are so burning, then we will be paying price for that. So the work-life balance itself has become a challenge. And with all this, what is happening is short-term pleasures are gaining importance over long-term pleasures. That is what we see in buying things or consuming chemicals. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing today. And what is very important is tolerance is going down. Lot of polarization, social, cultural, based on languages, based on caste, creed, culture. Polarized society is a great challenge because polarized society gives rise to intolerance, and intolerance gives rise to mental distress. So we need to think about all these challenges. They are not clinical, but they are socio-cultural and they are related to mental health. So we need to now look at some of the good things that have happened. That the stigma has come down. People have access to information, although they need to analyze which information to take and which not to take. People are using the resources in a better fashion than before. So these are some of the good things that have happened. People are also experimenting with their lifestyles, making it more and more environmental friendly. They are looking at the emotional value of their life and lifestyle. So good things are also happening. But these are the challenges. Now coming to the last part, that how to maintain a decent the decent work-life balance. Now, what is decent? See, any balance, no, is dynamic. So we need to understand that there is no work, you are getting gold medal for your work-life balance. That is not going to happen. Or you are getting a grandmaster norm, as in chess of a work-life balance. There are going to be moments of balance and moments of imbalance as well. We need to understand that there is not going to be a perfect balance, right? But there will be moments of that balance. Now let us define what is balance. There are two ways of defining it. One way, simplest, is when you are looking after your own emotional interests. This part is my own emotional interest, and you are keeping the interests of all significant others a close second. This is balance between my interests and others' interests. And there will be movements, and if those movements are more in intensity, frequency, and duration, the overall pattern will be of balance. So my interest and the other people's interest, when they are matched, we call it good team. When they match, we call it what? We call it as an efficient and happy unit. So this is balance, one way of looking at it. Second way of looking at it, going into physics. In physics, there are two types of forces, centripetal and centrifugal. Centripetal forces are self-centric and centrifugal are other-centric. I'm saying the same things, but with a different metaphor. So whenever the centripetal and centrifugal, that is self-centric and other-centric forces are balanced. Take an example of a top. The top at the top speed has balance of centripetal and centrifugal forces, and it is at its dynamic best. But how is it seen? It is seen as stable. That is the balance. So let us understand that the balance is dynamic. Let's not equate stability with staticness. So the work-life balance is going to be a dynamic stability all the time. And which means what? Which means every moment of balance and imbalance is an opportunity for all of us to know a little more about our own selves. And that is what we can call as decent.
Proceed with. I think it's a great start. I mean, right at the beginning of the session, we've got a great idea of what we are going to talk about. So, moving to something related to the same line, Dr. Nadkarni, I would like to ask you something related to workplace stress and roles of colleagues, managers, and team members. Now, I think a lot of us would want to know, like, how can leaders and managers better address and support mental health needs of their team members and colleagues? I think most of it is interlinked, but you would have, you could give us some better vision.
Okay. See, while at the workplace, we call each other colleagues, right? Why? Because we have come here with one common goal. That one common goal, on one hand, that one common goal has elements. One element of that common goal is that our organization should prosper, right? Should be a better organization. And our second goal is that along with the organization, I should also prosper. By prosper, I don't mean only materially. By prosper, I mean developmentally also, right? So again, what the managers have to do, again, it is like my and others, no? These are my interests and these are organization's interests. So you require somebody to navigate this balance. And that is the role of the manager. That the manager also will have an individual stake. The manager will also have this part, the individual part, and the manager will also have the part of others, the organizational part. And the manager will have to navigate this. So a manager will have to manage, therefore, his own interest efficiently, and then look after the interests of others also efficiently. And therefore, the manager or a leader, let's call him a leader, him or her, a leader will have to have thinking awareness and emotional awareness. I'll get it into practical. What is thinking awareness and what is emotional awareness? Thinking awareness is how quickly, how efficiently you are able to see options and decide on which is the appropriate one. That is your thinking awareness. And that is a role of every leader. Emotional awareness means what are the feelings of the person with whom I am relating just now. It may be a colleague, it may be an external customer, internal customer. What is he feeling, or he or she is feeling, and how I can align my emotions with the emotions of that person. Very important part. By aligning the emotions, I would get a fair idea about the emotion of the other person, and I would respect all those emotions. I may or may not accept them, but I will respect those emotions. I know that this person is very annoyed about something, and before saying that this annoyance has to be there or not has to be there, I will first at least acknowledge that you seem to be very, very annoyed just now. Or you seem to be a little out of your elements just now. Your mood is not as good as it always is today. So a manager will always be mirroring emotions of the colleagues. That is emotional awareness. So a leader who has thinking awareness, which comes into solutions, and emotional awareness, which we can call as empathy, then that leader can be both efficient and empathic. There are leaders who are very efficient, but who are very curt and dry emotionally. On the other hand, you get two emotional leaders who would get drowned in the emotions and would go from empathy to sympathy. So, if the manager has to support mental health, then he should have a blend of appropriate emotion with realistic solution. And that appropriate emotion comes from empathy, and the realistic solution comes from thinking awareness. That is how the manager has to see the role if he has to support the mental health needs of the colleagues.
Thank you so once again, Dr. Nadkarni. I think this was the inputs are again very valuable. I think the key takeaways that we think from the second point of discussion is more to do with thinking and emotional awareness and the right balance, as rightly explained by you. And going with the same, trend. I mean, there are more questions now, not necessarily to do with the corporate world. There would be some issues or concerns which people would want to know or learn from. That is something to do with parenting and stress, where probably how to balance emotional needs of kids while enduring challenges and being sane at workplace. This is now maybe to do more with the hybrid mode, where we have a few days that we work at home and we have the kids disturbing you and distracting you. At times we scold at our kids, and as a result, not good or balanced at that time as well for the kids as well. So I mean, how should one handle these situations?
Yeah. I think that work from home has added another dimension to the whole game of parenting, I suppose. Now let's look at the basic thing. Our kids today, the product of 21st century, most of them, right? Unless they are very old, right? So they are fiercely individualistic because we have also given them that freedom. We have given them the freedom of picking up choices. So they by themselves are individualistic, and we as parents are also giving them relatively more freedom to pick up choices. Now, when you give freedom, you have to pay the price of it. And when you restrict the freedom, you have to also pay the price of it. Because there is no choice that is without price. Now, what happens in our parenting? We, most of us, go from completely indulgent parenting to completely strict parenting. There is no in between. There are some moments when we are very indulgent because we feel at that time we get an attack of guilt. Yeah, I am doing so much for my career and I'm not giving them attention. So give them what they want. And on the other hand, we are very strict. This is not going to happen in this home, in my presence, blah, blah, blah. So in between is actually the rational parenting, where again, I do this, my interest and child's interest, how I can match them. Let's get it into theory, into practical. What we need to do is, the child is going to come out with a choice in a situation. A choice is, I don't want to study now. Suppose the child comes very clearly with this. And at that time, your preferential choice is that the child should study. Right? Now you have a choice and the individual, the child has a choice. Now, if you remain more and more adamant, that is rigid on your choice, the individualistic guy is also going to be as rigid or more. So the first important point of effective parenting is negotiate. And in negotiation, what do? You respect the person in front of you in spite of the age, experience, etc., etc. And you say that we negotiate with clients, right? We negotiate with team members. We negotiate with so many people outside. At that time, we respect that individual as an individual. But here what happens is, my child. And why should I negotiate? After all, he's my child. So, fine. And what is very important is that you are dealing with that individual, giving respect in spite of age. In our national language, Hindi, even if the person is small, there is a way to talk up. Even when I am talking to my grandson in very good Hindi, then I won't say tum. In proper Hindi, it will be aap. Aap means that I'm giving respect. So even with my 4-year-old grandson, I will be talking like, aap na ye nahi karna. Aapne ye karna hai. That aap is very important. What we do is we come from aap to tum because he becomes my child. And then negotiation suffers. So in negotiation, respect the individual first. Number 2, listen properly. When we get into that parental mode, our listening prowess suddenly deserts us. And we only want to talk and we want the other person to listen to us. So listen carefully. Find out what is the communication and what is the meta communication. Leave apart these words, simpler words. What is the script and what is the self-talk? Easier words. Script and self-talk. Script means what? What the child is saying. And self-talk means what the child is meaning. For example, you are very, very busy nowadays is the script. But the self-talk is, I want your attention. You get the point? So when you start listening, then you start discriminating between the script and the self-talk. Very important for negotiating. That this is the script that is coming up. You seem to be extremely busy. And the self-talk is, give me some attention. No, I'm craving for it. That is the self-talk. So you have to hit the self-talk. Don't get entangled in the script. Right? So how do we get entangled in the script? So suppose the child says, you nowadays you are too busy. Then I say, for whom I am toiling all this? For your future, no. You have actually missed the self-talk. You have started responding to script. The child also knows that you are toiling very hard for his or her future. You did not reiterate it. The self-talk is that, yeah, give me attention. So we need to focus on the self-talk, not the script. And then understand that what are the negotiable choices. For example, studying now, not studying, in between, studying with intervals, studying after this, studying before this. Look at it as a flexible thing, no? That look, rather than looking at study as a task, you look at study as a process. Because what is study? Study is finally learning process, no? Right? That will give you ideas of negotiating. Okay, what are you really tired of? This book, reading makes drives me crazy. So you require a change from modality. How can we change the modality of learning? You are negotiating, right? Oh, I can understand that you are losing your interest because of continuous reading. Can we replace it with some other activity? And what can you do? Something like, you teach me what you have learned. Very, very simple. So the point is, now you are changing modality. You are negotiating. That kind of awareness, same, thinking awareness and emotional awareness, that is universal. You are leader at workplace or you are leader at home. Same thing works. And then you are negotiating, and then the norms with feedback you are following. That if you do, then you can make these people better adherent to the rules and norms of the house. Now, coming to that part, that working from home is again respect for individual spaces and sharing common spaces. And in that, if we can have negotiated rules and norms, then those things, the friction can come down. I won't say the friction will go, because the children will also have their personalities. But with that, at least the frictions can come down. This is my office space. This is our common space. And that is your space. And these are the ways we will go in each other's spaces and respecting that space. That whenever I'm going in that space of my child, I need to have at least a mental knock knock. A mental knock knock that I am entering that space, that awareness, what I call as mental knock knock. We do that in official communication. It's a physical knock knock, right? We ask, may I come in? We need not ask that in personal space, but we have to get it into our self-talk at that time. Then our approach of dashing into the personal space will not be there, right? And these are many times, please understand, in parenting, these are non-verbal signals. And the non-verbal signals work much better than the verbal lectures and sermons. That the child gets that feeling of respecting the space. So that is something that we need to do at such times. And also the common space is to be used for common goals. I see many a times in many families that the common time that people have now, people have their own mobiles. So they are together, but they are not together. It is like lounge of an airport or a railway station. That people are they are together, but they are not together. So what is very important is that we need to look at role modeling as an effective way of parenting, not lecturing. Children today are very quick. They will see the double standards in our behaviors. And they will point that out to us, that this is where you did not behave the way you told us, right? So role modeling is very important. How do you behave with people? How do you behave with things? How is there a kind of even duty distribution at home? Are there stereotypes of duties at home, or people are given duties in the family according to competencies, leisure, and liking? So this is how children will look at us, right? So role modeling has to be our principal way of parenting. That is very important. Many times parents come to me and say, oh, our children nowadays, they do not read. So I tell them, how much do you read? Give me 4 books that you have read in last 2 months. So you are not reading anything than the newspaper, and you are expecting the child to read Bhagavad Gita or what? So very funny, that we want them to be something which we are not. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have parents who will say, because we could not do these things, we want them to do these things, which is another extreme of the spectrum. So what is very important is role modeling, and very important, do not hide your fallibility, do not hide your vulnerability from children. We are fallible human beings. If we commit a mistake in parenting, own it. And we are all vulnerable human beings. Sometimes when you are having some emotions in front of the children, do not try to behave adult. Share your vulnerability. Accept your fallibility, because you are not a perfect parent. If your child is an evolving and developing child, you in the role of parenting are also an evolving and developing parent. When your child is 1 day old, you as a parent is also 1 day old. So you are developing your parenting with your child. So if we look at it this way, many times what happens, we lose the pleasure of parenting. We are doing it duty wise, and we do those duties extremely well, to the best of our capacity. But pleasure is such an important part of parenting. One day one mother was telling me that I have the most pleasurable moment when I see my child asleep. So, because that child is so overactive. So, what we are losing many times is the pleasure in that whole process. Kumar?
Thank you, Dr. Nadkarni. I mean, it was really, really valuable. I mean, the points that you covered about listening and respect, more of, I mean, these are really deep and valuable thoughts that would come to all the parents, young, old, or I mean, whatever age group their children are. And I mean, I totally, for myself as well, I think the role modeling aspect that you've mentioned is going to be a takeaway for me too, along with all the other areas that you've covered. So thank you so much for that. So moving on to the next part of the section, Dr. Nadkarni, this is again to do around what I understand throughout what I've learned from this session so far. It is again to do with something with emotional and thinking awareness. But I would still put forward these questions combined, consolidated together. Is ways and tips that you would suggest to combat stress and mental health challenges? What are daily practices to avoid mental stress? Any formula to be a positive thinker?
Wait. Huh. Uh, let's go part by part.
Yes.
So, yes, people will require some tips. I will just correct that word positive thinker to realistic and positive thinker. Because sometimes positive need not be realistic. And how do you cannot avoid mental stress, but there is distress and there is eustress. Means there is some necessary stress and there is some unnecessary stress. Hmm? Who was the first person to tell this to the world? It was Gautam Buddha, probably the first cognitive psychologist here, so in the world. He gave us a metaphor of a string instrument and said that the string instrument, if it is too tight, it will not produce a musical note. If it is too lax, then the same will happen. When it has optimum tension, it will produce a musical note. That is true with stress. So there are two types of stresses, distress and eustress. So to make things further simple, we will say that there is something that is called as full tension and there is something that is called as cool tension. So there is full tension, there is cool tension. What is the difference between the two? And I'll give you 5 or 6 pairs, 12 words, because you require the take home to be crisp, right? So how do we differentiate between full tension and cool tension? First pair, goals and priorities. If I have clarity about my goal and if I am prioritizing different things appropriately, then I am on cool tension, not on full tension. Whenever there is a team working in the office on a project in which all of them are really immersed and involved, there is a timeline for which they are working at, but they are completely process driven, right? And that is something which is very, very important, that when you have goals and priorities once noted there in your mind, you become more process driven than outcome driven. When you are process driven, you are on eustress, cool tension. You become outcome driven, you go to full tension. So keep the goals and priorities in mind, but then focus on process rather than outcome. So goals, priorities, first pair, process, outcome, second pair. Third pair is factors within control, factors beyond control. Always focus on factors within control, then you are on cool tension. And when you go to full tension, you go to factors beyond control. Oh God, please save me. Factors beyond control, right? So we have to differentiate between within factors within control and factors beyond control. And we have to focus on factors which are within control, right? So that is the second point. The third point, which is very important, is problem versus blame. It is actually the fourth pair. Problem versus blame. Very important. Rather than defining what is the problem, we generally define whom to blame. And when blame comes, we go to full tension. I was talking to a mother, and see, we are very clever in using words. So I was talking to a mother, and this mother said that I have too many problems. I said, okay, what are those? She said, my daughter is a problem. So then my husband is a long-standing problem. And my son is a developing problem. So I am amongst all these problems. That is how we put it. But what is the internal track? What is the self-talk? Self-talk is blame, not problem. So we are too cunning to use words. Actually, we are on blame orientation, but we don't use the word blame. We say he is a problem, she is a problem, that is a problem, this is a problem, right? Which means if all those people get their problem solved, I am happy, right? So actually we are blaming, but we are calling it problem. So what is very important, if you go on blame, you go to full tension. If you go to maintain problem orientation, you will go for alternatives, then it becomes cool tension. That what are the alternatives? What are the solutions? What can I do? So that is the next pair. The next pair is person versus behavior. If you focus on person, you go to full tension. Focus on behavior, it is cool tension. I'll give you an example. Suppose you want to criticize. What are you going to criticize? You want to criticize a particular behavior, a particular performance of that person. But what happens? We start with performance. We start with behavior. But then we also don't know when we shift to person. Let's take parenting ka example. So suppose I want to wake up my child from bed. My first 2-3 sentences are on behavior. That please wake up immediately, the school bus will come, this will happen, that. And then I go to you lazy bum. So from performance, I go to person. I start using all the adjectives. At workplace, I may not use all the adjectives in script, but they will be there in my self-talk, right? So what is very important is, where is my focus? If it is on performance, I am on cool tension. If it goes to person, then I am in full tension. So these are 5 pairs, 10 words that differentiate between necessary tension and unnecessary tension. And please understand, we all are human beings and we will fluctuate between the two. And there is also a third pole that is called as nil tension. Tension nahi lene ka. We go to that, that leave everything nil tension. So sometimes it is nil tension, sometimes it is full tension. And in between these two poles is full tension, where the goals and priorities, factors within and beyond control, problem versus blame, process versus outcome, behavior versus person. So all those factors are there. So we can, this is just summarizing for take home of our audience. Now go to the next couple of your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nadkarni. I think this was an overloaded uh, tablet that you've given to all of us. I think most of us may go back to this video to review and to understand, or rather to go back and come back to face it in our day-to-day life. But thank you so much for this. So continuing with the same question, sir, I think it is more of to do again with the same lines. How
Yeah, so some of them we have covered, but you can.
So probably again it goes back to some effective strategies. I think again it
Yeah.
will be related to your process outcome that you just mentioned about focus on
Yeah.
factors within control and rather differentiate between factors and all. So I think
Yeah, but
something.
you have one question about confidentiality, and I think that is
Yes.
important at
Yes.
workplace.
Yes.
That I want to help my colleague who is emotionally disturbed, and at the same time, I do not want it to be a public affair. Very understandable, because all emotions are very individual properties. Correct. Empathy is required to understand the emotions of that person. And confidentiality will mean that how not to make it public, but at the same time, key people should understand who are directly involved in the well-being of that person. So discretion is required. If there is a problem, emotional problem at workplace, discretion is required. And with discretion, you can also maintain a kind of a protective network around that vulnerable person, right? But that culture or that environment of empathy has to be there. And there has to be very less stigma. I was working with a manufacturing company in India called Godrej and Boys for many years. Consumers, they used to manufacture. On our shop floor, we had developed what we called as Sahakari Mitra, worker colleague. And those people, we had trained them in empathy and detection of emotional problems. And many of the people who belong to the segment of disorder, our people used to be so good that they even looked after the tablets of those people. They could be so discreet yet so helpful. So that some of my people who were having illnesses like epilepsy, or we call psychosis or depression, bipolar, they were so well maintained because our worker colleagues took care of even their medication. Right? So this can really happen. Huh? You can maintain confidentiality, and with the discretion, you can really help that person. And for that, the general environment also needs to be quite empathic and helpful and understanding.
Thank you so much once again, Dr. Nadkarni. I think this was absolutely invaluable insights that you've shared with us regarding confidentiality and all. And I think we are like quite close to our session time. So I would like to check if anyone has any questions or
Yeah.
if you.
We'll take some questions from the audience.
Yes, sir.
Do you see some cultural difference regarding mental health in workplace? Yes. Uh, yes, Michael. Very important issue. Because what is very important is in the Eastern culture, the definition of personal space is very fluid. Traditionally, the personal space where it merges with common space, whether it is family or society, the distinctions are very blurred as compared to the definition of space in the Western world. So what a Westerner would feel as an intrusion, the Easterner will feel as a visit, not intrusion. Somebody has come to visit me. So that is something which is a difference in the cultures. And those things are very important. Some of the informalities of Eastern culture are very important. We should protect them. And some are very important things which are sometimes taken for granted, which is the bad part of it. That you take your space and other space as one, and you start taking the other person completely for granted, which is the not so good outcome of the whole thing. So yes, the culture does have a lot to do. We were talking about confidentiality. In our culture, the Eastern culture, once that person is accepted, no, that oh, he is also one of us, then there are no problems. So in our culture, we use, even in mental health, the group therapy method much more than the Western world. And our groups at times number into hundreds. And people don't mind sharing their intimate details with hundreds of people once the acceptance happens. So, there are a lot of these cultural differences that all of us have. And it depends on how we are using the cultural differences for betterment of the emotional health part. For example, in the Eastern culture, the involvement of family, worst part over involvement, but good part, the involvement of the family is much better in the welfare of the members. People do a lot for the family members. So that is our strength of Eastern families. I work in the field of de-addiction, and the amount of support that the drug addicts and alcoholics here they get from their families is phenomenal. And that's why we work separately to engage and empower the family members. We do that in addiction, we do that in schizophrenia, we do that in other mental illnesses also, because we believe that these kind of family ties, they are an asset to us if these family members are sensitized, educated, and empowered.
Sir, I have a question before we wind up the session
Yeah, Maitri.
from our audience, of course. So, our colleague wants to know, how is mental health and spirituality connected? If these two are intertwined, how?
uh, I'll give you a quick insight into that as to what is spirituality from Indian point of view. So, yeah, Paula is saying that with Western culture, the emotional sharing can be a taboo matter. Yes, Paula, totally agree with you. So, I'll talk about the Hindu philosophy. That is something, see what we said, my interests and others' interests, right? And if I keep my interests, emotional interests first, and keep the interests of significant others a close second, that is called rationality. I'm balancing my interest with the interest of others. Where does spirituality begin? Spirituality begins, according to Indian thought, or the Hindu thought, or the Vedantic thought, to be more and more precise. It says that the definition of others has to expand first. That the significant others are not only my family, not only my colleagues, not only my fraternity, but all. So when you expand the definition of others from a few to many to all, according to our philosophy, that is a spiritual leap. So this is first, you are expanding and making the definition of others as inclusive as possible. And second, very important point in our philosophy, now look at my fingers. When my interests and others' interests become one, This is called as Advaita, the lack of duality. So there is no duality between my emotional interest and others' emotional interest. And non-duality is the essence of Advaita Vedanta. So what is very important is that there is nothing like me and you. It is all one. So that is how you can start with individualistic psychology. You can make it rational psychology, and then you can get into spirituality. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3.
Thank you, sir. Kumar, before we wind up, I think you would like to take another question in the chat box. It's very interesting one.
Yes.
Shared by Ashwini.
So we have another question, Dr. Nadkarni. We can see that the word depressed is very commonly used today whenever someone is sad, stressed, and not an actual definition of depression.
Yeah.
So can you just explain how we can differentiate our emotions and not just put all emotions under the word depression?
Oh, yes. Very nice question. Our emotional vocabulary for many of us is very limited. It is limited to 4 words: sad, bad, mad, and glad. So these 4 words are enough for us to explain all emotions. Very important is to see the shades of emotions. That is what is a fundamental part of what we call emotional intelligence. And what gives the shades? The self-talk gives the shades. If you see the shades of emotions and find out appropriate words, then you are actually working on your emotional intelligence. Then you will not use blanket words. Then you will not call depressed. I think the better or safer word to use when you are not sure about emotions is disturbed rather than depressed. Because disturbed is a more generic word rather than depressed. Right? Now, see, depression means what? In one word, if I have to, in one sentence, if I have to say the self-talk, everything has ended. Nothing is going to work now. Everything has ended. Nothing is going to work. Full stop. That is depression, right? But what is sadness? Sadness means I have received this setback for now, and I need to find out how to deal with it. Please understand, in first, everything has ended, and here I have received a setback in 1 or 2 or many things. Now that is a shade difference between depression and sadness, right? So these are very subtle differences which are very important. Even in our clinical psychiatry, they say very interestingly that depression is made up of a triad of worthlessness, hopelessness, and helplessness. Look at these 3 triad. Worthlessness, which means my value is 0. Hopelessness, which means there is no hope here. And helplessness, nobody understands me and nobody will help. See the shades, right? So the more we see the shades of the self-talk and how that person is expressing through his script as well as the non-verbal part, we will be more sensitive towards usage of terminology.
Thank you, Dr. Nadkarni. I think that covers Ashwini's question, what she must be looking for. I mean, the outcome or the solution, rather, I would say.
Thank you so much.
So on this note, Dr. Nadkarni, as we don't have much questions, and I mean, we are quite close to our time. I mean, just exceeded by 4 or 5 minutes. I would just like to wrap this session. I'd like to thank Dr. Nadkarni on behalf of the Green Impact Network Pune and Springer Nature for sharing such invaluable insights with us. His journey shows how kindness and determination can change lives. Dr. Nadkarni's dedication to mental health has helped many find comfort and hope in tough times. I mean, this is what we all can understand from the entire session. And once again, thank you so much, Dr. Nadkarni. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
All the best.